did not have a toilet-centric sense of humor at all, and now when you riff on it, I just go with it.
That was going to be my epithet. It was going to be, who is it? It's like Apollo or someone is like wind-footed, and I was going to say wind-trousered.
You are such
I thought, no,
a
like
boy.
that, yeah.
You are such a boy. I'm amazed you have never, like, farted in front of me. You're such a boy. I'm waiting for that.
Well, we can talk about this.
What have you just been, because I don't have a sense of smell, just
you've
been
silent but violent.
We have to stop because I'm getting the ick for you as a co-host.
Okay.
So we've got to stop while you have any goodwill left.
Great.
Okay, whatever. Welcome to Save Me From My Shelf, a literature podcast where we take classic tomes off their pedestal to make you less anxious about reading them. Our jokes come from a place of love and for a specific teaching purpose. However, if you think that making fun of great literature, and maybe some mild swearing, is offensive, this might not be the podcast for you. Hello, you are listening to Save Me From My Shelf. The people's princess over here is Daniel.
It's got to be Melania Trump.
Fuck you.
It's got to be Melania Trump. Melania Trump here is Abby.
Tacky-o.
What's that?
Jackie-o.
Oh. Hell, that's obviously way better, yeah. Jackie Onassis is Abby.
Right, we are back from our break. I have returned from my European sojourns. I should be relaxing in a pleasure grotto or like on a Doge's luxury barge, but here I am, performing for you fine folks. Right, do you want to read some letters for us,
Yes,
friend?
please, yes. Here's an email from Patty. I just wanted to express my thanks for your advice at the end of the Lolita episode about how to approach analysis of a book that you dislike, because I had been avoiding that particular classic for decades. I had attempted it once on audiobook. Ooh, I wouldn't want that in my ears. Thought it might make it easier, but as soon as the narrator, Jeremy Irons, noted son marrier Jeremy Irons, said, "Light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul," directly into my ear, I knew there was no way I could do it. Anyway, I made it through the book, but then struggled with how to talk about it in my blog post. I recognised the skill that had gone into the writing, but I couldn't allow myself to like it. Abby's advice to use my dislike to coldly analyse the book allowed me to look back at it from a distance. Then, much to my surprise, like Daniel, I found myself being charmed by Humbert Humbert. Joining the gang of the groomed. I didn't like him any better, but I couldn't ignore him. And she sent us the review she wrote, which is very thoughtful.
I'm really glad, Patty, that our advice was helpful. It's so hard to divorce your personal feelings from analytical thought because, you know, these things are deeply personal to us. So I'm really glad if that advice has sort of helped out in any way.
I just think that's good that literature's about sort of learning to dissociate oneself from one's values. It's good practice for like being a sort of prison camp guard, isn't it? I think too. That's why this English literature just has so many transferable skills, doesn't it? Like, and we're not capitalising on that. We've got another one here from Catherine. Hello. I just found your podcast recently and love it. 3 loves. It's educational and hysterical and thought-provoking. Who knew anyone could do all that in one podcast? Oh, I didn't even know we could do that. I'm an ER nurse turned editor, journalist, and freelance writer.
That's cool.
I just retired and I'm now a happy historical fantasy writer. God, doing loads.
Oh my God.
Who would have thought one person could do all that? She's sharing her podcast with all her nerdy pals.
Yay! Thank you.
And has also requested Jamaica Inn.
Oh, Daphne du Maurier.
By Daphne du Maurier, yeah. Cornwall.
Oh.
I've been to the inn itself. It's weird because there's like plaques everywhere saying that this is where this happened, but obviously it's not real. But anyway.
We've gotten quite a few requests for Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. If we do any du Maurier, we're probably going to start there purely because that's the more famous text. It's the one that I imagine is taught more. But I have been meaning to read Jamaica Inn for years and years, so maybe.
Also, Rob Roy. Is that Walter Scott?
That is Walter Scott.
I do want to do Scott.
I do want to do Scott as well. Again, we'd probably start with Ivanhoe because
correction, we do Waverley.
Fuck you, Waverley.
I want to do Waverley. No. I love the Highlanders. Jacobites.
We're...
Jacobite. Blind Lemon Jefferson.
Catherine, you have thrown now a cat amongst the pigeons here while we yell at each other.
Yeah, off air, yeah.
Right, so, Daniel, what is our text today?
Banter, O muse of podcasting. About a pair of poetry vulgarizers, owl-eyed Abby and smug-mouthed Daniel. Banter of the grey fingers of dawn that bring forth yet another day in the city of the porridge-coloured canals. And of the creature that our heroes encountered there. A podcast episode with, count 'em, 2 parts. Ooh, it's weird. It's a monster. Banter of how the phallus-finding Vermonter and the trivia-wielding Brummy did battle over this 2-parted episode. Tell of omissions, simplifications, excessive elaborations, and tell of how they were lost in the endless recapitulations of their subject. Homer's Odyssey, circa 800 BC.
I am very charmed by that.
Okay.
However, did you call me owl-eyed because I have large eyes?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want to say for the listener that my college roommate's mother asked my college roommate
I did this now.
if I had that Marty Feldman disease.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, Mom, Abby just has big eyes. So thank you, Daniel, for...
Is that wrong? I thought that'd be... That's a bit of playful ribbing.
So it goes without saying, we're about to spoil this text for you. In terms of what we're going to be talking about, this is quite a violent poem, so just brace yourself for that. There's a lot of eye squick, so if you are sensitive about stuff to do with eyes, big owl eyes like mine, brace yourself.
There's only one eye.
Still. There's cannibalism, abandonment, a lot of sexual assault and aggressiveness, drowning and shipwrecks, suicidal ideation, mass shooting with a bow and arrow.
Oh, that's such a cool bit, yeah.
Lots of slavery, gaslighting, hanging, and cruelty to animals. Alright, background me.
I will do. So, the Odyssey is one of the 2 major epic poems that are traditionally attributed to this poet called Homer. The other's the Iliad. They depicted these events that surround this semi-mythological war, the Trojan War.
Do you think it would be a good idea before we proceed, because the Odyssey is sort of a sequel or a spin-off of the Iliad.
I don't think spin-off, yeah.
Should we do a very, very brief recap of the Trojan War and the Iliad?
Hit me. Sing no Muse.
So yeah, save me from my shelf. Hyper recap here. Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, was married to King Menelaus of Sparta, and one day Prince Paris of Troy, this sort of young, hot, twink guy, he came to visit. He and Helen fell in love at first sight, and they ran off in the middle of the night back to Troy, causes this big international incident when Menelaus, her husband, wakes up to find his wife gone. He calls on all of his fellow kings of Greece to sail over to Troy and get her back. Troy has these huge impregnable walls, so the city is under siege for 10 years with no side really winning over the other. And in the Iliad, we meet this famous cast of characters over the course of this 10-year war. You've probably heard of these guys: Agamemnon, Hector, Achilles, and Odysseus, among many others.
Ajax.
Yes, that's among the others.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks.
It's Odysseus, one of the Greek kings, who finally figures out how to break the back of this war and get into the city and kill all the Trojans. He's like, we're going to pretend we've all left and gone back to Greece, and we're going to leave this giant wooden horse as a, I'm sorry gift to the city of Troy. It'll secretly, though, have a bunch of our soldiers hidden in the horse's belly, and once the horse is brought in behind the city walls, they can sneak out at night, open the gates, and let our army in where we can slaughter everyone.
Imagine making all those packed lunches.
Yeah, how do you use
Lots
the loo?
Yeah, good point, yeah.
So that's exactly what happens. The Trojans are defeated, Prince Paris, the hot young twink, is killed, and Helen just basically kind of winks at her ex-husband Menelaus, and he's like, oh, I forgive you, and he takes her back to Sparta like nothing ever happened. So that's the context for the Iliad.
Yeah.
And the Odyssey specifically follows just as Odysseus, the guy who came up with the horse idea, he leaves after the war, and the whole thing is him trying to get home after all this nincompoopery.
Yeah.
So, we break off from the big war, and now we just follow this one dude trying to get home after.
Yeah, I didn't realise this until recently, but there were a whole bunch of other poems, supposedly, that cover other events in the Trojan War.
Oh, that's cool.
They've all been lost. Not all of them were by Homer as well. Some of them were by other kind of mythological poets.
So I think we talked about this with the Oedipus episode as well, that this is sort of mythology that people would have known already. So it's not like Homer just came up with this out of the blue. Like, people had this as part of their cultural tradition that was, predates this poem. This is just one instance of them telling it. So
part of a whole cycle as
exactly.
Like Oedipus is as well.
And it's part of this huge network of a ton of different, stories about the Greek gods and various Greek heroes and things. And so, the characters will pop in and out of this. You get a lot of Greek gods popping in and out of this. We know their whole deal already. The audience would have known who they were.
Love that guy. You'd be like, oh, I love that guy. He's in it. Great. I'm sold. Hephaestus.
It's the Marvel Cinematic Universe of the ancient world.
Yeah.
Did you know Tony Stark shows up for a hot second in this one? Zeus is here.
Could have done with a bit more wisecracking in this, to be honest. So Homer, this poet, he was this kind of foundational cultural figure in classical antiquity. So like everybody in ancient Greece and Rome, that was a big name. They all loved his works, and the Greeks in particular, like, studied him religiously, like Abby was just saying. The poems kind of politically united the disunited Greek city-states as well, and I think he even wrote, the poems are written in this kind of sort of artificial poetic language that kind of includes a lot of different dialects. I'm not a classicist, so I'm happy to be corrected on that, but it's like a very like mannered literary form of Greek.
Yeah, so just remember that Greece wasn't all just one country here. It was an area that contained several different smaller kingdoms, like all of these little kings that banded together to go fight in Troy to win back Helen.
But he was like a sort of, like a kind of prestige figure, like a lot of classical learning.
Yeah, and I am glad you mentioned we are not classicists. So, if we get something wrong, please let us know. I was a weird Greek mythology preteen. If that counts for anything, it does not. But, this is not a specialism by any metric.
No, yeah. The actual identity of Homer is a bit strange, isn't it? So the legend that the Greeks had was that he was this blind bard who came from Ionia, which is in Turkey today, and he lived around the sort of 8th century BCE. The real identity of Homer was called into question during the early modern period and is still a kind of hot topic. It's like a real question, not like the Shakespeare authorship controversy. This is real. It's nothing to do with Warwick County Council or making anything up. So the oldest written evidence we have of the Odyssey is some fragments from a Roman tablet from the 3rd century, our era. And the earliest full versions that we have of the poems are from the Middle Ages, because people just had to copy them out again and again. So there's no sort of ancient Greek copies of these poems. So scholars are like today, they don't really think that the Iliad and the Odyssey were even written by the same person. They also don't even think that they were written by one author, or even that they were written at all. The interpretation these days is that these works sort of coalesce from a whole body of like oral traditions from the illiterate culture of the Greek Dark Ages, so that was like the 10th to the 7th century BCE, and that these sort of composite works were eventually sort of put into textual form when the Greeks developed their alphabet, in the lead up to the classical era.
And I think it's worth putting into context that this happens a lot. So if you think about it in more modern terms, the Brothers Grimm didn't write the fairy tales that we know and attribute to them. They collected them from all over, and they sort of collated different versions of the same story.
And changed them.
Yeah, they put their own spin on them, and these were things that were just sort of told through oral tradition. So that's probably what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
This is a poem. It's meant to be recited aloud.
Yeah, it was performed. As I say, though, we're not classicists. This is all just kind of our own, like, oral tradition, isn't it? You hear on... from classicists on the radio and stuff, I don't know anything.
Yeah, we're reciting this in a way. We're retelling it and putting our spin on it.
Hence my invocation of the Muse in the... Yeah. So, we're reading a translation as well, I didn't read ancient Greek. I went to a comprehensive school. But we're reading the recent one by Emily Wilson. So I think she's the first woman to ever write a translation of the Odyssey, which is interesting. Although... Samuel Butler, the 19th century iconoclast, thought that the Odyssey was originally written by a woman, so...
I had heard that if these were written by single authors, there's a theory that the Iliad was written by a man and the Odyssey was written by a woman. You were talking to me before we started recording about that, about the...
Butler's theory was that it was like a teenage girl that Mary sued herself into the legend by being Penelope.
I was going to say, that is a dark Mary Sue. I just want to cry.
Yeah, and weave.
And I'm the one desiring. The husband isn't even that desirous of me.
Yeah.
I just stay at home and just wait.
Yeah, it's not great. the theory doesn't really hold out. Yeah, we had the kennings for Beowulf.
Remind us what a kenning is?
So it's like calling the sea the Swan Road. It's a kind of metaphor that works as a composite of two terms. Homer doesn't do that, but he has these like epithets, the famous Homeric epithets, that are these like recurring formula in the kind of style of the poetry, but also in like narrative devices. So we'll see these used to describe people, places, and events. So owl-eyed Athena, cunning Odysseus, rosy-fingered Dawn.
If I have to read rosy-fingered Dawn or some variation thereof one more friggin' time, I got so sick of that.
Yeah, come on, there are other metaphors out there. And there's also all these like set pieces, aren't there? There's loads of stuff to do with customs about bathing and hospitality, animal sacrifice. So maybe put a few dings in for that, I don't know.
We can give that a shot, sure.
Yeah.
The Odyssey starts, as most epics do, with an invocation of the Muse to tell us a story. A story about a complicated man. A man who maybe made some mistakes. A misunderstood man. No, this isn't the story of Woody Allen. It's about Odysseus.
Casting.
Penelope.
All these improbably attractive girlfriends as well. I often think about when you're at sea and there's these beautiful women singing to you, don't...
But yeah, Odysseus, the smart guy from the Iliad, you know him. And after the 10-year war, he took another 10 years to get back home, when every other man in possession of his faculties just took a direct flight back to their houses. What's this guy's deal? Well, friend, we're about to find out.
The gods, they're all up on Olympus or whatever, and they're all talking over the question of Odysseus themselves. They've seen him fumble his way across the world for the best part of the last decade, and they're like, what's going on with this guy? Some of them pity him. Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom, most of all. But the god of the sea, Poseidon, has it in for him, and is very deliberately waylaying him. Poseidon, lord of earthquakes...
Epithet.
Yep. He says that, well, it's absurd that mortals blame the gods. Oh, it's absurd. No. He wouldn't talk like that, would he? It'd be absurd that mortals blame the gods. They say we cause their suffering, but they themselves increase it by folly. So, it's not Poseidon's fault that Odysseus is lost. Don't blame him.
It's not our fault that we punish you, is what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We the gods rule that humans can eat shit and die. That's what he's saying.
Pretty much, yeah. So we find out, and there's this very long flashback about this later, that Odysseus blinded Poseidon's son, the Cyclops Polyphemus, and this is why Poseidon punished him. It's only following the law. If someone blinds your boy, you've got to punish them, right? So it's really Odysseus' own actions that have landed him in the soup.
I don't get why Poseidon cares so much about just one kid. Do you have any idea how many kids Poseidon has?
It's a matter of honor, though, isn't it?
He's the Nick Cannon of the sea.
I don't know who that is. So, yeah, Zeus, the cloud god.
Epithet.
Yeah. No, he's like, it's probably time that we give Odysseus a break. So he sends Hermes, the messenger of the gods, off to go and see Odysseus and help sort out his problems, while Athena goes to find Odysseus' son, Telemachus, to send him on a voyage of his own.
So, Athena, the owl-eyed goddess, epithet, she goes to Odysseus' kingdom, Ithaca, and she meets his son, Telemachus. Now, Telemachus has never met his father. He was only a baby when Odysseus went to war about 20 years ago. Odysseus' wife, Penelope, she's still, hanging around, and let me tell you, friends, she is a high-caliber MILF. Penelope's having a bit of a hard time of it, too. Without her husband there, a bunch of local suitors from the island have started sniffing around, and they're trying to convince her that Odysseus must be dead. He's been gone for 20 years, and maybe she should marry one of them and give them access to Odysseus's money and power. She's very, thanks but no thanks, I'm good, because Penelope is the most faithful woman in all of literature.
Hooray!
Her husband Odysseus, though... we'll find out he's monogamish, but more on that later. So, despite Penelope's refusal, the suitors absolutely point-blank refuse to leave, And the laws of hospitality say she can't kick them out. They're really rowdy, they're eating and drinking just everything, and she's basically living alone with a bunch of guys in a frat. It's kind of a Smurfette situation.
Yes.
And the suitors are getting a little annoyed about it, and they're maybe starting to think about murdering her son, Telemachus, that pesky little male heir to the kingdom. Now, Telemachus has had it, and he's like, can you guys please stop sliding into my mom's DMs? It's creepy. But they brush him off as this pesky little kid and a stone-cold cock block.
Surely Medusa is the stone-cold cock block.
So it's at this point that the goddess Athena shows up to help, and she's like, here's the deal, Telemachus. Your dad is alive, and he will return, but you need to get off the island and find him some help. You need to help assist him back home.
And also just see the world a bit. It's a bit of a sort of gap year thing for Telemachus, this whole thing, isn't it? Yeah.
So Penelope does basically nothing in this book except grieve her beloved lost husband. I think I'd feel a lot more for her, except I grew up watching all of those sad Sarah McLachlan commercials. I'm completely desensitized to suffering.
Like any good literature scholar. The early dawn was born, her fingers bloomed.
Oh, epithet.
Yes. Telemachus gets up, ready for action. He straps his sword across his back and ties his, quote, handsome sandals onto his well-oiled feet. I was thinking he might slip over. A lot of marble everywhere, and you always... Yeah. He calls a council of all the people of Ithaca to address the problem of the suitors.
And these are all Odysseus's sort of like local old buddies, right? Like their group chat's gone real quiet since he went off to war.
The community WhatsApp, is that what you're thinking? Saw some funny suitors walking by. So the Ithacans are pretty complacent about the whole thing, and the suitors, obviously, they're Ithacans, and they're there too. And they're pretty irked by Telemachus calling this meeting. And some of them point out that this whole issue is just Penelope's fault. They would all move out of the palace if she just married one of them years ago. Instead, she's been waylaying them with all kind of tricks. The very famous trick is that she said that she wouldn't marry anyone until she'd woven a shroud for her ailing father-in-law. And quote, so every day she wove the mighty cloth, and then at night by torchlight she unwove it. For 3 long years her trick beguiled the Greeks, and then eventually one of her slaves dobbed her into the suitors.
She's Dread Pirate Robertsing them. Good night, maybe I'll marry one of you in the morning. Also, how weak are the threads on that shroud? Like, that's some Primarch level shit.
Telemachus calls on Zeus, and he curses the suitors, and he says, if you don't leave now, then by Zeus you'll die here. At that point, 2 of Zeus's great eagles come and swoop at the suitors. Quote, reaching the noisy middle of the crowd, they wheeled and whirred and flapped their mighty wings, swooping at each man's head, with eyes like death, and with their talons ripped each face and neck. Everyone's like, what does that mean then?
It means Telemachus is a beastmaster. That's what that means.
Yeah, we just need to get out, is what I think it means.
I know, I would never stop running. If somebody cursed me to Zeus, and then Zeus's eagles
that
are
minute.
like, I'd be gone.
Yeah, but...
there would be an abbey-shaped hole in the wall.
And remember, this is a marble wall. So Telemachus, he's like, oh no, I'm on the right side, but I don't know what to do. Athena turns up again, and she's like, yeah, you gotta go to the mainland. There you can find out about your dad, maybe even bring back allies. Meanwhile, the suitors are like...
your ass is grass, Telemachus.
Yeah, what if when Telemachus were to meet with an unfortunate accident while en route? There's the kind of vulgar American suitor, and then the sort of... kind of fusty English suitor.
But my question is, why does Telemachus never entertain... even for a second, that maybe his dad sailed out for a pack of smokes and ain't coming back?
Yeah, Telemachus' nanny/slave, Euryclea, she's like, oh, don't go, please don't go. Things will only get worse with the suitors if you're not here to keep them in check.
You're not going to do the voice the whole time? The weird Borat voice?
I don't know what that was, I'm sorry, everyone. And he's like, don't worry, it'll be fine. But promise me, you will not tell Mother until she notices me gone. Say nothing for 12 days, so she will not start crying. It would spoil her pretty skin.
First of all, she is always, perpetually crying. Secondly, surely spoiling her pretty skin would make her less boinkable. So that's a net gain for you, Telemachus. Thirdly, you live in the same palace as your mother, and she's not going to notice your ass gone for almost 2 weeks?
It's a big palace.
And finally, Don't talk about your mother's sexy skin, Aegean.
Who's that then?
Serial killer. So Telemachus sets off on his big adventure. He goes looking for answers.
Oh, read the line. Leaving the ocean streams, the sun leapt up into the sky of bronze to shine his light for gods and mortals on the fertile earth. I love that stuff.
I left all the poetry for you. You're the poet of the two of us.
I know.
So it's a bit of a detective story here, a little bit like Oedipus Rex.
Ooh, yeah, I didn't think that.
That he's trying to hunt down who was the last person to see my father alive. So he makes his first stop to go visit Nestor, which is one of the heroes of the Trojan War. And Nestor and his dudes are all having this big sacrificial cleansing party on a beach, because after the Trojan War, they failed to properly honor the gods, so a lot of them had trouble returning home, like Odysseus did.
Ooh.
The first rule of ancient Greece, you must honor the gods. So Telemachus is like, hey Nestor, we're looking for my dad. He's been missing these 10 years, since Troy. Nobody's seen him. Did you happen to see him die in battle, or like, what's up? Nestor uses this opportunity to start telling war stories, and he recaps the Iliad, and Orestes, and a bunch of other famous stories that are sort of tangentially related to Odysseus' plight, and it just goes on, and Telemachus is finally like, yeah, that's great. Have you seen my fucking dad, though? And long story short, because there is a lot of feasting and ceremony here, Nestor hasn't seen him, but hey, maybe you should go ask King Menelaus, husband of the now returned stirrer and all-around haughty Helen of Troy. As my grandpa used to say, she's the sort of lady who would make a fella write bad checks.
Ooh.
So Telemachus is like, fine, and he makes it to his next stop, which, by the way, I'm going to tell you guys, this is his last stop in the book. This is as far as he gets, because Menelaus and Helen are gonna, hold him up for the whole book. So Telemachus goes to Sparta, to the court of Menelaus and Helen, and they have a very divorced couple trying to make it work energy. Like, $50 says these haunted assholes have a Peloton in their house.
Oh.
Telemachus shows up interrupting a family wedding, and it looks like he's gonna get bouncered at the door. But, quote, flushed Menelaus shouted angrily, "We two were fed by many different hosts before returning home, as we may hope for Zeus to keep us safe in future times."
The second rule of ancient Greece, be hospitable.
Be aggressively hospitable.
Yeah.
I just think about that Dylan Moran bit where he talks about, if somebody comes over, you have to bring out every damn piece of food in your larder,
Yeah,
or else they'll talk bad about you in the village. Here, eat this, you
It is a lot like provincial Ireland.
So yeah, there's a lot of hospitality culture that runs through this. We finally cut to the chase. Menelaus, have you seen my dad? Menelaus, he waxes poetic on Odysseus. Oh, he misses Odysseus, something fierce. And I'm starting to think maybe a little queer reading? He really misses Odysseus. At this point, Helen of Troy makes her big glam entrance, and she sort of looks Telemachus up and down, and she's like, who's this jabroni? Asshole looks exactly like that Odysseus guy from that time, honey. Remember that time I f***ed another dude for 10 years? Remember?
Yeah.
Helen is such a dirtbag. I have never loved anyone more. I mean, I know everyone loves Helen of Troy, but...
Yeah. What about those when she's like, oh, I remember Odysseus, because she ran into him on some secret mission behind the walls of Troy, and she's like, I swore an oath I would not reveal him to the Trojans. By then I wanted to go home. I wish that Aphrodite had not made me go crazy when she took me from my country and made me leave my daughter and the bed I shared with my fine, handsome, clever husband. Which is such a great... I just went crazy,
Oh, it cannot possibly be held accountable. Is Helen taking the piss here? Is she actually trying to sweet talk her husband, or is this read sarcastically?
Oh, you think it's a sort of, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? My fine, handsome, clever husband.
Oh, if Aphrodite didn't make me go crazy all over another guy's dick. Sorry.
Well, that's what Aphrodite does, in fairness. Anyway, Telemachus apprises Menelaus of the situation, the missing dad, the suitors, all that. And he's like, have you any news of Odysseus' whereabouts? Do not sugarcoat it. Menelaus is like, well, I had my own long voyage home, as we already heard from Nestor. All the Greeks had a kind of slightly rough journey. And I was on this island off the coast of Egypt, where I chanced upon the old sea god Proteus, having a little sunbathe with his seals.
This is crazy. He tells us about this little side quest.
It's a good bit. So yeah, what you have to do is, Proteus knows everything, but you have to, like, sort of catch him before he'll reveal anything to you.
He's a fucking leprechaun.
Yeah, so he's the old man of the sea, isn't he? So he is a little kind of like, ooh, you know,
yeah, so if you're struggling and you're like, ooh, I think the gods are mad at me, Proteus is going to be the one to say who you pissed off and what you have to do to stop it. But you got to catch me, I'm the gingerbread man.
So the trick is, on this, like, island of the coast of Egypt where Proteus hangs out, you've got to wait till he gets tired from counting all of his seals. Sheep is the normal one. And so he takes a nap. While he's napping, you have to jump on him and refuse to let him go, and then he'll, like, turn into all different things, all animals, then water, then a holy fire. If you manage to hold on to him for all of that, he'll tell you what the deal is. Menelaus does that, and the old god explains to him that the Greeks hadn't been sufficiently respectful of the gods. That's where they got lost, including Odysseus. And Proteus is like, you want to know where Odysseus is? He's currently weeping on Calypso's island.
Ooh, just drop a little flag on Google Maps.
Yeah.
Just pinpoint that for you. Also, this whole quest is sort of the equivalent of, like, in an RPG, to get you to learn how the game controls work. This is the thing that you have to do to be like, the tutorial.
Oh yeah, and Proteus would be like, good job, you press triangle effectively. And then after that, Menelaus, he performed all the necessary sacrifices. Lo and behold, he got home to Sparta.
And he just never said anything to anyone, like, oh, by the way, I heard Odysseus is, like, trapped and weeping on the goddess Calypso's island. He never sent help, never sent word back to Ithaca or anything. Useless. No wonder Helen left you.
Telemachus prepares to return to Ithaca.
But Menelaus is like, he's got very divorced energy.
Just another cup of tea. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, he invites Telemachus to stay for a few weeks because, you know, his wife doesn't really seem to like him that much. And Telemachus is like, sorry, buddy, I already have plans. But the third law of ancient Greece is you don't turn down hospitality.
Yeah.
You can't refuse it to people, and you can't really turn it down. So poor Telemachus is, like, trapped at this never-ending house party. So next, the goddess Athena goes to a big god board meeting in the sky with Thunder Lord Zeus, epithet. She reports that she and Telemachus, they've located Odysseus. He's trapped by the goddess Calypso on her sex island. And guys, we gotta get him home.
Poseidon is away on business. That's why they can do this, isn't it?
This is some Succession bullshit.
It is like that. He's in Ethiopia attending a ritual.
Quick, have the board meeting without him.
Yes, it's just like that.
Get his shares, Roman. Yeah. Zeus says, oh, that is just classic Calypso. Okay, I'll send her a cease and desist notice. Messenger of the gods, Hermes, you need to go and talk to Calypso and make sure that she knows she needs to give up Odysseus. So Hermes goes to the cavern where...
Can we have the bit where Hermes flies? He flies off and, quote, plunged into the sea and swooped between the waves just like a seagull catching fish, wetting its whirring wings in tireless brine. So Hermes scudded through the surging swell. Then finally he reached the distant land, stepped from the indigo water to the shore, and reached the cavern where the goddess lived. That's a great bit.
I like Hermes as Scuttle from The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Also, Calypso lives in a cavern? Is that a vaginal reading?
Whoa.
Yes, it is.
Bring it on.
So Hermes shows up and he delivers the bad news. Zeus says you gotta release your hostage boyfriend. Sorry. Calypso has a go at Hermes. How typical that all the male gods can go around raping and imprisoning and impregnating humans, but when a goddess does it... And I will say this, Daniel, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, not letting me keep a sex slave is misogyny. And I'm tired of it.
Yeah, you're right. The sort of libertarian feminism.
Also, Calypso continues, because she's pretty pissed off about this, I rescued Odysseus when his ship wrecked near my island, and his ass turned up here looking like a piece of chewed gum, so finders keepers. And Hermes says, now, you don't want to piss off Zeus, do you? And she's like, fine, whatever. So Hermes goes out, and this is the first time we see our hero. This is the first time we see Odysseus. What's he doing?
Wiping his ass.
I'll just carry on, shall I? He's weeping and looking out to sea.
Yeah, okay, boring.
He and Penelope were just made for each other. Odysseus cries during most of this when he doesn't go on, like, violent rampages.
Whoa.
Calypso turns up, and she's like, sup, baby? I'll offer you immorality. Immorality. I'll offer you that too. I'll offer you...
You get that free.
I'll offer you immortality if you decide to stay with me, because this loser over here says, Zeus says you gotta go home. Odysseus is like, thanks, but no thanks, love.
Wham bam, thank you, ma'am.
Calypso's like, fine, you're fired from me. Get your raggedy ass to making a raft and get gone. So then we have a montage of Odysseus making the raft, and finally, he sails off. He's spotted by Poseidon.
He's on his way back, isn't he, from Ethiopia?
Yeah, he's like, oh, you're on the sea now, are you, f***er? My turf. So clearly the other gods had a board meeting without me. And they've decided to help you get home. Well, not on my f***ing watch. Quote, he gathered up the clouds and seized his trident and stirred round the sea and roused the gusts of every wind and covered the earth and sea with fog.
Every wind, right?
Daniel?
I'm just saying.
Where are you going with this,
It's not
buddy?
just. It's not just some little storm here. This is every wind.
I thought you were going to make a fart joke because I know how you do.
Oh, sorry. No.
Soon a giant wave capsizes Odysseus' raft. Then Ino...
Stop! I thought of a really great joke.
Go on.
Say, guess who comes along? Say that.
Then guess who comes along?
I know.
You know what?
I know.
You know what?
I'm saying I know. Who's on next? It's like that.
We're such assholes. Can you guys believe this podcast is free?
Yeah. It's a good joke, I think.
Yes.
100 years young.
Ino, who is a minor sea goddess. She turns up and she's like, wow, what'd you do to piss Poseidon off so bad? Hey, I'll help you out of this scrape. And he's like, oh good, can you magic me back home? And she's like, I sure can't, friend. Instead, I'll give you some advice. And he's like, ma'am, I am literally drowning. And she's like, okay, here's the advice. Swim! Oh, and it's better if you're naked when you do it. Bye! And then he finally washes ashore. I made it to land, Poseidon. Peace!
Nausicaa, the princess of the Phaeacians. We cut to her. She's lounging around at home. Athena turns up as per, and she's in the guise of this princess's best friend. And she's like, ooh, there's lots of dirty clothes around your room. Maybe it's time you did a wash.
You little grublet.
Well, that's a little clue about Dark Age Greece, isn't it? That even the aristocracy had to do their own laundry. So yeah, Nausicaa's like, sure, good idea. She heads down to the river, and we get this really good bit with the washing. I like the minutiae. I don't care about, all the magic. I want this. Quote, they reach the lovely river where the pools are always full. The water flows in streams and bubbles flow up from underneath to wash even the dirtiest of laundry. It could be an advert, couldn't it? That?
I actually said here, because it's all very, idyllic, and this sounds like a tampon commercial.
Ooh, even better. Don't know why. So, the girls brought out the laundry from the cart and brought it to the washing pools and trod it, competing with each other. When the dirt was gone, they spread the clothes along the shore where salt sea washes pebbles to the beach. They bathed and rubbed themselves with olive oil. Then they sat on the riverbank and ate and waited for the sun to dry the clothes. So it's all lovely and idyllic.
They're eating salads and laughing at the salads, and it's it's like,
Yeah.
or maybe it's like yogurt. Maybe it's a yogurt commercial.
Yeah, some kind of yogurt tampon type thing.
It's all the same. It's just women looking blissful and wearing white trousers.
Just then, quote, Odysseus jumped up from the bushes. Grasping a leafy branch, he broke it off to cover his manly private parts.
Excuse me, ladies, can I borrow a cup of shirt?
He looks like crap, but he's got the gift of the gab, hasn't he, Odysseus? That's one of his, skills. He managed to smooth talk himself out of this awkward situation. So Nausicaa, she's like, here's some clothes, here's some olive oil for bathing. Yeah, another classic bath scene. Go and see my parents, King Alcinous and Queen Arete, to ask for help.
So, they go back to Nausicaa's palace, and the courtiers ask Odysseus to tell his story. And he recaps basically everything we've heard up until this point, but he doesn't tell them his name. And they're a really hospitable people, so they decide to kit Odysseus up with a ship and 52 strapping men to row it to help him get wherever he's going. But, before he goes, more hospitality and more partying. And it just goes on for ages. We have this little mini Olympic Games, wrestling, boxing, racing, jumping, discus, and all I can think, and I know you're going to yell at me because it's probably not one of the better Simpsons episodes, but that Ancient Greece Odyssey Simpsons episode.
Bad episode.
discus stews got ouzo for tuzo.
God, yeah.
All of the athletes on the island beg Odysseus to take part. Come on, stranger, this'll be fun. Or else. But Odysseus is just a real miserable fucker, and he weeps all the time, and he just wants to go home. Everyone's partying too loud when I want to have a good cry. I have never suffered in silence. If I'm in pain, the world should be in pain.
They say that about Achilles in the Iliad, that he's all like, that's a kind of, they obviously had like a different idea of manliness back then. There's no strong silent type in ancient Greece.
One dude on the island is kind of a jerk, and he mocks Odysseus for not being quarterback material. What, you just want to sit on the sidelines and cry? So Odysseus
Yes, please.
agrees.
I was like that in PE. I was just like, yep, that's fine by me.
I will happily sit here and cry for the full 55-minute period.
I'm crying anyway, I might as well sit here.
So they give him the discus, and he ultimate frisbees that thing really far. Like, that discus is in Cambodia when it lands.
Whoa.
And that kind of puts a little spring in his step. And he has a complete 180 mood switch. And he's very like, who else wants to challenge me? I'll take you all at once. Any sport. One bollock tied behind my back. I'm the world's greatest archer. I'm not so good an archer that I could best the gods. I already have enough of them pissed off at me, so I'm not going to make that claim. But I am better than any mortal by a country mile. So his, like, mood disorder, or whatever this is, kicks into overdrive, and it makes the crowd kind of go silent. And one dude's like, yeah, okay, we're good. You ruined sports for us. There's a ton more feasting and partying and singing and telling stories about the Greek gods, blah, blah. Tons of filler material here.
Can we have what they eat?
Sure.
12 sheep, 8 boars with silver tusks, and 2 slow lumbering cows.
Guys, get some fiber in your diet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Constipation, you're right.
Odysseus is gonna need a colonoscopy before long.
Greek word.
Then there's some more singing, but this time it's about something familiar. They sing about the Trojan War and about that hero Odysseus and his clever trick with the Trojan horse. They have no idea that the guy who did it is right there on their futon. Odysseus is so... I thought this was hilarious. He's so moved, I guess, by hearing about his own exploits.
It's like a PTSD thing, isn't it?
That he starts crying, and he starts crying so hard that even the narrator pulls us, the audience, to the side, and they're kind of like, you know how a woman would cry if, like, she saw her husband brutally killed in front of her? Like, really scream crying? Well, that's what Odysseus is doing at this party, and it's weird. One of the dudes pulls Odysseus aside, and he's like, hey, buddy, what's wrong? Did you lose somebody at Troy? Do you want to tell us your name and your story? And Odysseus goes, 'tis I, Odysseus, whose exploits you just sang in epic, and I'm gonna tell you why I'm so fucking sad. And this is what I remember of the Odyssey. Like, this is what I thought the whole story was. I did not realize how much of this book is preamble.
And indeed postamble.
But so, like, the bit that we all associate with the Odyssey starts really late in the poem.
So anyway, here we are. We're at the bit.
Gird your loins, people.
Yeah.
This is a famous bit.
Yeah, that's biblical. We don't want that. No loin girding here, please. Get them out. This is the famous bit. Who are you, stranger? Wily Odysseus, the Lord of Lies, epithet, answered, where shall I start? Where can I end? I am Odysseus, Laertes' son, known for my many clever tricks and lies. Let me tell you all the trouble Zeus has caused me on my journey home from Troy. So, I'm just going to kind of summarise some of these bits. After leaving Troy, Odysseus and the Ithacan fleet, they were blown off course toward Ismarus, where the tribe of Sycones lives. I love those guys, the Sycones. Well, you know, don't get too attached to them. Odysseus sacked the town, killed the men, and stole the women.
Why? Just
That's just what you do. That's what you do. Unfortunately, however, the Sycones' allies turned up and fought the Ithacans away.
Textbook, f*** around and find out. I have no sympathy.
Exactly, yeah. Then a storm hit the fleet, driving it toward, quote, the island of those who live on food from luscious lotus. Odysseus sent some scouts to go and see the locals, and they shared the delicious fruit of the lotus with them.
Yeah, the land of the lotus eaters is basically the land of the potheads. Everyone's just eating fistfuls of opium.
Which made them forget all about their home. So Odysseus is like, you're coming back with me, you know, you can't have this nice life on this, like, you know, I wouldn't mind that. Just kind of eating drugs all day.
I remember this bit being significantly longer.
No.
But these are sort of like junior-versity monsters in this section, and not much to report. Like, that's it.
Yep. Next, now we get a bit more detail.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Here we go.
this is
Big
it.
episode.
Next, they arrived at the country of the reckless Cyclopes. Cyclopses. I don't know. Cyclopes is the plural of Cyclops. Lacking in customs, they put trust in the gods, and do not plant their food from seed, nor plough, and yet the barley, a little bit of barley on an island, grain, and clustering wine grapes all flourish there, increased by rain from Zeus. They hold no councils, have no common laws, but live in caves on lofty mountain tops, and each makes laws for his own wife and children, without concern for what the others think. So, Odysseus lands on this island of all
Of
these... like, weird-
libertarians.
Yeah.
So basically, these huge one-eyed giants are protected by the gods to do whatever the hell they want. So what should Odysseus and his men do? They should maybe really mess with the Cyclops and steal their goats. Now, they find one Cyclops who's a bit more of a loner than the rest, and he's just got a real, like, homeschooled energy. This Cyclops' name is Polyphemus, if you remember from the beginning. He's the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and this is the interaction that's going to put Odysseus and Poseidon in a little bit of a Biggie Tupac feud for the rest of the poem.
He's a biggie fella, isn't he? Polyphemus is.
While Polyphemus, the Cyclops, is out herding his sheep and goats one day, Odysseus grabs his 12 best dudes, and they do a felony B&E, and they break into the cave house, and they steal a ton of the Cyclops' cheese and lambs, and bring it back to their boats. Like, Odysseus is just a flat-out felon. This is such a hospitality violation. They then contemplate sailing away right there, quote, "But I refused. I hope to see him and find out if he would give us gifts. The giant monster you just robbed." Friends, I am about to enjoy this lighthearted story about consequences. Right now, I'm about as good as sober gets. So, Odysseus, again, takes his 12 best dudes, and they roll back into that cave like a bunch of dickheads, and they make themselves right at home, they light a fire, they eat more stolen cheese, they sacrifice some of the goats, and they wait for the Cyclops to come home. Really sucks to be them, because when Polyphemus comes home and locks up for the night, my dude really locks up for the night. He rolls an enormous stone in front of the cave's entrance so nothing can get in or out.
Boom.
He turns around and sees the band of felons. Odysseus explains who they are, and he says Zeus punished them by blowing them off course, but also Zeus super duper loves us, so please don't hurt us, and also can we have a gift please and thank you.
Present now.
So then the Cyclops jumps up and smacks two of Odysseus' men to the floor. Quote, "He ripped them limb from limb to make his meal, then ate them like a lion on the mountains, devouring flesh, entrails, and marrow bones." The rest of the men freak out, as you would do.
Yeah. Could we just say, when he does brain the things,
The men.
he knocks them against the ground like puppies.
Ooh.
Are people killing puppies? Also, another God of his travels thing, he says that, he's like, when he's on the giant island, he's like, I could have just been squashed like a puppy. Was there a time between 800 BC and like 1800 AD when everybody just willy-nilly trod on puppies?
So all the rest of the men, they start weeping and praying to Zeus, and Zeus is kind of honestly avoiding them like they used to date. He's popping some popcorn, sitting back, seeing how this whole situation plays out. Now Odysseus sees this, and he is madder than a wet hen, and he contemplates stabbing the Cyclops to death when he falls asleep. But then he remembers, great big rock in front of the cave, we need this guy alive so he can roll that stone away in the morning. So Polyphemus, he gets the sort of like full belly nap time post-Thanksgiving slumber, goes to sleep, wakes up in the morning, does some light chores around the house, grabs two more men, gets to the creamy center, all part of a nutritious breakfast. So he, goes out and he tends his flock, whistling, walls them back in.
Polyphemus is going to progressively eat his whole crew.
You know the phrase, I'm a total snack? That works for Odysseus on 2 levels.
So Odysseus is like, I need to do something before everyone gets killed. Quote, I made my plan. Beside the pen... Wait, that's not the Odysseus voice, is it? We need an Odysseus voice, don't we? No.
Pretend your balls have dropped. Sorry.
I made my plan. Beside the pen...
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's funny.
Sorry.
Beside the pen there stood a great big club, green olive wood, which he had cut to dry. to be his walking stick. It was so massive that it looked to us like a ship's mast.
You're serving Brian Blessed. I dig it.
Yeah,
I dig it.
That's my Odysseus. And he and his remaining men scraped it down and sharpened one end. Now, here's another thing about the cave. It's full of dung. So
Okay, wait. I know. Okay. Is it implied that the animals did this, or that Polyphemus just did a big heckin' poop?
I think it's a cocktail.
He just leaves it there,
Yeah.
pooping on the floor.
They're wild men. They don't know. Just shit in the corner of the cave. It's fine. And then
But he
around.
could just go outside.
Well, if you put a boulder in the middle of the night, dark. I don't
Okay.
know. So, anyway, Odysseus has this massive shiv that he's made. The dung is so huge that he can hide the shiv under a nearby pile of it.
A shiv.
Yeah, it's shiv. The is shiv that shiv. So, Odysseus' men have, for some reason, they brought some wine with them for their exploration of the island. You know, I suppose you need a drink all the time. And that night, when Polyphemus gets back from a hard day milking and herding and shepherding and things, he's like, how about you have a cup of this wine, Polyphemus? And
How big is the cup then?
well, that's what I was wondering.
Because Odysseus gets Polyphemus drunk
Yes.
on 3 glasses of this.
Yeah, thanking you kindly, stranger.
It's either the strongest wine known to man, or he's serving him great big goblets of
I think
it.
Polyphemus just never had it before.
Oh,
It's a
maybe.
lightweight. The giant likes it. He has a bit more. He's like, "Thank you. What's your name?" And Odysseus is like, "My name is No Man. My family and friends, because I have them, call me No Man." And Polyphemus is like, "Well, thank you very much. I'll eat you last."
Yeah, oh, little buddy, the last thing I want to do is hurt you.
Yeah.
It's still on the list. It's still on the list.
The last thing.
Last thing.
Yeah, literally. And then he conks out, completely drunk. Here we go. Here's the bit. Let's have the passage in full, please. Full passage.
Right, so now here, he's passed out. What's their plan, Daniel, with the shiv?
All-conquering sleep took him. In drunken heaviness, he spewed wine from his throat and chunks of human flesh.
Jesus Christ.
We've all been there, haven't we? What did I do last night? And then I drove the spear into the embers to heat it up and told my men, "Be brave!" The fire soon had seized the olive spear, green though it was, and terribly it glowed. My crew stood firm. Some god was breathing courage in us. They say that a lot, don't they? Some god. I think that's an epithet.
No.
Okay. They took the olive spear, its tip all sharp, and shoved it in his eye. I leaned on top and twisted it as when a man drills wood for shipbuilding. Below, the workers spin the drill with straps stretched out from either end. So round and round it goes. And so we whirled the fire-sharp weapon in his eye. His blood poured out around the stake, and blazing fire sizzled his lids and brows, and fried the roots.
Jesus.
As when a blacksmith dips an axe or adze to temper it in ice-cold water, so did his eyeball crackle on the spear. Horribly then he howled. The rocks resounded, and we shrunk back in fear. He tugged the spear out of his eye, all soaked with gushing blood. It's a good bit, isn't it? I love eye gouging.
Well, credit where credit's due. I mean, Odysseus is really the MVP of his Oedipus cosplay group.
Well, I was going to say that, because we had this same bit in Oedipus too, with an excellent bit. And here's a little mini-analysis thing. I was just thinking, ekphrasis, the rhetorical practice of describing an artwork, like a visual artwork, verbally, without people being able to see it. I was thinking that the Greeks' poetry, like in Oedipus Rex, of tearing out eyes, that's like the sort of like purist ekphrasis, because it's like, you ain't going to see any more, so I'm going to describe to you
Oh, that's
the
cool.
destruction of your own eye.
Oh, that's gross. I love it.
Yeah, so that's my little...
Ugh.
You think anyone heard any of this? Yeah, you better believe they did. There was a massive hoo-ha. So the other Cyclopses are like, well, I don't normally bother on my neighbours because I'm a
Libertarian.
Yeah, do what you like. But I might drop by. Is everything okay, Polyphemus? The giants say.
You're being kind of loud over there, bud.
Keep it down. My liberty begins where yours ends. How about that? And Polyphemus is like, my friends, no man is killing me. And they're like, okay, well, that's a funny way of saying that you're fine. Yeah, but sure, that's fine. Okay, see you later then. Quieten down.
He couldn't. I do think that this is the one like little technicality plot point that I hate. He couldn't say, somebody's just stabbed me in the eye. There are a bunch of small dudes that I've been eating, and they stabbed me.
What are the chances that the trick's going to work?
Yeah, well, exactly. And I know we're meant to suspend our disbelief a bit here. I mean, for God's sake, we're talking about gods and magic potions and monsters.
This is the bit. You're right.
I
It's
know.
silly. Yeah. No man is killing me. Right?
So stupid. Right.
A woman could be, you know what I mean? Yeah. I am no man. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So the blinded Cyclops, rather than getting any assistance, he rolls open the stone at the door. He sits there with his arms outspread, hoping the men are going to make a break for it, and then he'll catch them when they run by. But, don't forget, Odysseus is really, really smart. And he tells us at length how clever he is.
Really clever.
So he ropes together a bunch of the giant's sheep, and he puts them into little bundles of 3, one for each of his remaining men, and he straps each man to the belly of the middlest sheep. So if the Cyclops reaches out to touch whatever's moving nearby, he'll just feel some strangely clumped, roped together sheep. This is some real Kevin McAllister shit. He's one step away from walking out behind a cardboard cutout of Michael Jordan.
So now we've got the Macaulay Culkin casting.
Stop trying to preempt my casting. Odysseus tells us he even saves the Cyclops' best ram for himself to make super duper sure that he, Odysseus, survives. But literally all of Odysseus' plans are just about being smuggled in the belly of animals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good point.
So the Cyclops lets the sheep out to graze. He doesn't notice that they're in these weird little bundles of 3, and so the men get away.
Are you going to mention the bit where he talks to Odysseus' ram? That's a really sad bit. He's all like, Odysseus' ram goes out last. And he's all like, that's funny, you're going out last, my favourite. You're obviously sad for your daddy. Your daddy's had his eye poked out and you're sad for him. And that, I really feel sorry for Polyphemus at that bit.
Polyphemus has done nothing wrong.
Well, he kind of has. But
he defended his property.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, still.
If anything, Daniel, he is guilty of being American as shit. This court acquits you, sir. So Odysseus and the men, they make it back to the ship, they steal some of these sheep, they start rowing for dear life, and once they're far enough out on the boat, Odysseus screams back at the Cyclops, and this is verbatim, "Hey you, Cyclops, idiot!" And he starts mouthing off very na-na-na-na-na-na, and the Cyclops comes out of his cave, stumbling around. He rips a rock out of the hill, and Odysseus is like, "Ooh, big blind Cyclops gonna try to throw something? You expect me to be scared?" And he's like, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." And the Cyclops throws the rock at them, based just on where their voices are, and he is so accurate that he only just barely misses their boat. Worse yet, the big splash from the huge rock propels the boat backward towards the island. It doesn't look good for Odysseus. In this D&D setup, Odysseus needs to roll a 19 to escape. Can he do it, Daniel? Oh, he rolls a natural 20! Odysseus and his men, they're able to row for their lives, and when they get far out enough, Odysseus yells back again, despite his crew begging him not to.
Listen here, Odysseus, come down, it's not sporting.
And he yells back, essentially saying, "Just so we're really, really clear, Cyclops, in case you ever need to get revenge, I, Odysseus, robbed you."
The city sacker. Epithet. He's epithetting himself.
And ruined your life. And here is my home address, and my wife's name, and my social security number. The Cyclops then begs his father Poseidon to curse Odysseus and ensure that he'll never be able to return home. Quote, "Or, if it is fated that he will see his family, then let him get there late and with no honor, in pain and lacking ships, and having caused the death of all his men, and let him find more trouble in his own house." So, if I am one of Odysseus's dudes hearing this right now, I would start sharpening my knives, because his ass would be in that fucking ocean immediately.
Mutiny his ass.
Yeah, this is the head of the snake.
After leaving Cyclops Island, my favourite area of Disneyland, Odysseus and his fleet reached the floating island, which is ruled by Aeolus. This is a sort of another of these magical places you get, inhabited by Aeolus and his 6 sons and daughters, and they're all married to each other.
Just imagine an island of Targaryens, but without the sex appeal.
Odysseus is welcomed into this kind of weird incest commune, and he stayed for a month. Aeolus, quote, is steward of the winds. So when Odysseus was leaving the island, he was like, here's a bag, it's got all the wind in it, wind bag thing. You can use it maybe to power your boat back to Ithaca.
It's a weird doggy bag.
Yeah, so yeah, he just farts in a bag and gives it to... There we go. So Odysseus is like, well, thank you kindly, stranger, and heads off. The men, they didn't know what was in Odysseus's bag. And so while they were sailing back to Ithaca from Aeolus, all well and good, they were getting all jealous and saying, "He's got me these presents."
Okay, what's about to happen is entirely Odysseus' fault. He can't keep his fat feta hole shut, and he starts bragging to his men about all the dope gifts he got, because that king really loved me. But he doesn't tell them what the gifts are. So what a shock that his men start poking around.
No, it's the men's fault for the politics of envy. More libertarianism, please. They were within sight of Ithaca, weren't they? That's the thing. That's the sad thing about all this. They were within sight of the place. You could see it. You could see the mall.
The mall?
Yeah. It's an American thing. It's like a shopping centre. But then Odysseus fell asleep. He's like, well, that's my job done. He fell asleep. So the men all sneak up and open the bag, and all the winds flew out at once. Quote, a blast of storm wind whooshed the ship back to the island of great Aeolus, who had no intention of repeating his previous offer. He's like, no, you balls that up. The gods clearly hate you.
Aeolus is like, well, that sounds like an Odysseus problem, not an Aeolus problem. I'm not affiliated with you.
Aeolus. That's what that guy is.
So he leaves Aeolus' island, and they land instead on the island of Aea.
You meant to pronounce it like Aea. No consonants here.
It's spelled A-E-A-E-A.
Yeah, old MacDonald. On that island he had some pigs.
Home of the beautiful and dreadful goddess Circe. The men land there, they're like, okay, let's ask for directions because we're lost. We'll just go up to the front door, we'll knock. I bet Circe is nice. Odysseus agrees, but hey, let's split into 2 groups, and you guys, your group can go first. I'll stay here and protect the something. So the first band of men go up to Circe's house, and they see a beautiful woman singing and weaving, while surrounded by tamed lions and wolves.
That's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, in my academic opinion, that is awesome, and my critical secondary sources are rad movies.
Okay.
Circe is very hospitable, and she asks the men in, and she makes them some food, and then she secretly mixes in a bunch of magic drugs and feeds it to the men, and that makes them spontaneously turn into pigs. But, and this is so sick, I love Circe for this, she makes sure that their minds remain human so they can have a real good fucking freak out.
Piggy body, man's mind.
Like
You've just imagined.
or the other way around.
There we go, yeah. No, most men, that's what you should be saying. Most men.
So she leads them out to the pigsty, and she's just like, this is a great practical joke. You burnt.
One guy survived this ordeal. I think he's just got like a curly tail or something. I don't know what happened. But he runs back to tell Odysseus, and he's like, well, I'm not hearing of my boys being treated like that. So he heads over to confront Circe. En route, Hermes turns up to warn Odysseus about Circe.
Can we get a little side note about the messenger of the gods? Because we find out what he looks like.
Quote, he seemed an adolescent boy, the cutest age, when beards first start to grow.
Queer reading, hooray? I like my twinks fast.
Hermes gives Odysseus a magical herb called moly, or possibly molly.
He gives him some molly?
Exactly, that's right. I said that. And he's like, hey, this'll stop her magic from working.
Oh, Daniel, you don't have to tell me about molly. It's a standard pig antidote.
Yes, of course.
Importantly, though, Hermes warns Odysseus, listen, this'll help you best Circe's magic. But once you do, it's gonna make her crazy horny, and you're gonna have to sleep with her in order to turn your buddies back into humans. So, in the words of Sterling Archer, Get some cologne on those balls and get to work.
Yeah. Odysseus is indeed impervious to Circe's magic, and Circe's like, now sheathe your sword and come to bed with me. You know, unsheathe, blah blah blah.
Sheathe your sword. Is that a double entendre?
Well, no, because she doesn't want him to sheathe his sword, does she? In that sense.
Daniel.
That's what I'm saying. Sheathe your sword. Implicitly unsheathe your knob.
I thought it
sword.
meant because sometimes in these old texts, women's vaginas are referred to as sheaths.
Whoa! I'm so innocent.
You are. Oh.
Or it could be a condom.
Oh, maybe.
Practice safe sex. With a goddess.
Just like that, every episode
you have to explain some.
I have to explain something to you, and every time I do, the light in your eyes dims just a hint.
The world is just that little bit more sordid now.
I'm not gonna rest until you're just completely dead inside.
Yeah. Okay. Circe's like, yeah, come to bed with me. Through making love, we may begin to trust each other more.
I can't turn you into a pig, let's fuck. So wait, are you telling me that this is a pornography side quest, like in Grand Theft Auto?
Which one's that?
It was a very early one, but I remember there was some, like, cheat code where you could do, like, rack up points for doing porn stuff. All the boys in my class were talking about it in middle school.
Well, if somebody knows what that is, right in. This is all just about trust. So.
Oh, she doesn't want a porn hub, she wants a porn hug.
Exactly.
That's a joke from.
One of your own. You're using your material, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to.
It's funny.
Oh, okay.
I think that was from the 1984 episode.
Yes, it was. Yes. Odysseus is just like, yes, please. We'll have sex on condition that this isn't a ploy to hurt me in some way.
Please, pinky swear that you won't cut my dick off and throw it in the dirt.
After a stint in Circe's quote dazzling bed, and yet another olive oil bath, because there are a lot of these, aren't they? Not too hot. Odysseus convinces Circe to unpigify his men.
So, Circe, Odysseus' new side piece, says, listen, I know you miss Ithaca and your wife and your family so much. Let me help you rejoin them. 1 year later, Odysseus is still there, feasting and drinking and boinking Circe. This guy's got a honey dick if she let him stay a whole year. So his men are eventually like, can we please leave this party? Like, it's been swell and all. Now, Circe agrees, you guys can go anytime you want. But Odysseus first needs to fulfill another side quest. God damn it, can somebody please just send this man home? So what he needs to do is to travel down to Hades, the underworld, and find the dead prophet from Thebes, the blind Tiresias.
What? He's in Oedipus Rex.
He is an Oedipus Rex. So Circe says basically you can go home once you ask blind Tiresias for advice. To do what? Advice to do what? I don't know. Circe basically has just said, go see the Wizard of Oz. He'll know what to do. So then Odysseus asks her what we're all thinking, which is, how the hell am I supposed to figure out how to travel to the underworld? Circe, I'm going to really bottom line this. Yes, I am. Daniel, damn it. Circe gives him the most ridiculously complex instructions about how to do this.
This is my favourite bit, so I think I should be allowed to commandeer this.
Long story short, he does all of her instructions, and he makes it down into the underworld. He runs into some dead relatives, blah, blah, blah.
No.
Yes.
This is crazy. They go west. They find where the Cimmerians live. What's that? I don't even know who they are. There's some people who live in perpetual darkness right next to the river Styx. They come and dig a hole and pour wine and blood into it. That's great. And then all the ghosts start turning up.
Daniel, you are the reason I see my therapist. The only reason.
Yeah, well,
Okay, well, he runs into some dead relatives, and finally he runs into Tiresias, the blind prophet. Ugh.
Quiz. Do we know why Tiresias went blind? Because I do. I'm going to do a little mini story within this. As punishment for you skipping most of the Hades stuff.
No! Right. Let's get back on
Tiresias is there. So all these creepy ghosts come. It's a great bit.
Is it?
We're not doing it justice. I don't know why Abby didn't like it. It's a really good bit. It's scary.
Is it
All the men are really frightened. There's a ritual.
Sure is.
Tiresias turns up, and he's like, on your way back to Ithaca, you're going to come across some grazing animals. These belong to the sun god. And if you want to get home safe, you need to leave them be. When you return to Ithaca, you need to kill all the suitors that are currently mooching off your estate. Quote, when those men are dead...
Then nothing. That should be the end of the story.
No, this is the cool bit. No, you have to go away and take an oar to people with no knowledge of the sea who do not salt their food. So when Odysseus gets so far inland that he meets someone who thinks his oar is a winnowing fan, he must sacrifice a bull and a stud boar to Poseidon, then everything will be cool. So he's got to go to like Mongolia or something.
I was going to say, yeah, is he going to go someplace in Russia? Are we going to take a road trip to Russia? Because I would really love to fold Chernobog into this mix.
Ooh.
I'd love to get a different pantheon to integrate.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
But one step at a time, he's got to get home first. Okay, so he has a bunch more interactions in Hades. There are some relatives, a bunch of people he knew in the Trojan War who are now dead.
Agamemnon and Achilles are there.
Yep. The main thing that Odysseus takes away from all of these visitations in the underworld is that his wife Penelope has been the most honest and faithful of women. And
oh yeah, there's all that stuff like, all the evil women appeared from history.
Yeah,
bitches.
Yeah. Bitches. And when Odysseus arrives back in Ithaca, though, he needs to travel in disguise and do not trust any women because they'll betray him, which I guess means female servants and not the intensely faithful Penelope, but whatever. Hades quest done. They go back to Circe's island, and she's like, okay, you've fulfilled your, thing that you needed to do. I'm gonna now tell you the best route to get to Ithaca so nothing can hurt you. And Odysseus is a bit huffy, but he agrees, you know, how dudes hate getting directions from women.
That's fresh material.
I thought I'd update my pop culture references.
Yeah,
Do you like it?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I do like it.
Everyone, abbyboucher.com for more of this material. So, she tells him first, you need to beware the sirens. What are the sirens? What's their deal? They're beautiful mermaids. Or maybe weird bird women. I don't know. I think we conceptualize them as mermaids now, but in ancient Greek culture they were like creepy bird women. And they sing such enchanting music that any man who hears them will dedicate his life to just sitting on the nearby rocks to listen. If you get caught by their spell, you won't do anything else. You won't eat, you won't sleep. You'll just wither away and die listening to them sing. So the only way to sail by them safely is to plug up your and all of your sailors' ears with wax.
Done and done.
Ancient noise-canceling earbuds. However, Circe says, Odysseus, you can actually listen to their song and live to tell the tale. You just have to make sure that your men have wax in their ears and that they lash you to the mast with the strongest ropes and knots they can. After the sirens, Circe says, you have to sail through a very narrow strait between Scylla and Charybdis. What are Scylla and Charybdis, you might ask?
Yes.
Well, Scylla is a horrifying monster who lives in a cave near the ocean. Quote, she has 12 dangling legs and 6 long necks with a gruesome head on each, and in each face 3 rows of crowded teeth, pregnant with death.
She has a puppy-like voice, can I just add? What's Charybdis, please?
Well,
and thank you.
A powerful whirlpool that will suck down your whole ship to the bottom of the ocean. The key is you have to sail between these two without getting too close to either, and then you'll be grand. Circe tells him, okay, but you better row quick. That's the only way you're going to make it through. And you should expect some casualties. Scylla will straight up maul your ass. It's going to be like Street Fighter 2. Expect to lose some dudes.
What's the kids?
Now, Odysseus is an absolute prick, or a great middle manager. He's like, guys, gather around. Circe gave me directions. She's helping us. Here are all the dangers ahead. And then he literally only tells them about the sirens and to plug up their ears. He doesn't say a fucking word about Scylla and Charybdis, which he knows is guaranteed to kill some of them.
Probably can't pronounce it. It's probably right. So, first protocol, sirens. Odysseus followed Circe's advice. He's like, man, plug your ears. Yours truly is going to have a listen. See? So the sirens sing to Odysseus. Quote, Odysseus, come here. Yeah, come here.
I'm sorry.
Bob Dylan.
That's your siren
You
voice?
are well known from many stories. Glory to the Greeks. It could be, what do you call it? Could be Nashville Skyline Bob. Now stop your ship and listen to our voices. All those who pass this way hear Hunnit's song poured from our mouths. The music brings them joy, and they go on their way with greater knowledge. Since we know everything the Greeks and Trojans suffered in Troy by God's will, and we know whatever happens anywhere on Earth. So,
do we want to do another take?
I don't think so.
So, in other words, the sirens are texting Odysseus, hey, with a slutty number of Ys.
Next, they reach the Strait of Scylla and Charybdis, which some people think is in Sicily. The bit between the boot and the Sicily.
Why do I feel like I'm drunk right now?
We rode through the narrow strait in tears. On one side, Scylla. On the other, shining Charybdis with a dreadful gurgling noise sucked down the water. When she spewed it out, she seethed, all burning like a boiling cauldron on a huge fire. But while our frightened gaze was on Charybdis, Scylla snatched 6 men from the ship, my strongest, best fighters. Well, they can't be that good, can they? Looking back from down below, I saw their feet and hands up high as they were carried off. In agony they cried to me and called my name, their final words. So I bet it feels a bit guilty about that. I've got a question about Charybdis. Is she just a whirlpool, or is the implication that she's some kind of monster under the sea that kind of drinks the water?
I thought it was a sort of slightly sentient whirlpool.
I thought it was that too, but I think it might actually be some kind of like...
Oh,
like that thing in Star Wars that, drinks the sand.
So this whole incident puts the fear of Jesus in the other men who, while Scylla is dining al fresco, they row as fast as they can and they soon make it out of her reach, and they manage not to get gulped up by Charybdis, and it's a very, very narrow escape. But this is the worst interstate toll booth I've ever seen. Next, they make it to the island of Helios, the sun god. Now remember, Helios, he's the one who loves his cows maybe a little bit too much. So yeah, this is the guy that Tiresias is like, stay away from his livestock. So Odysseus makes them swear to stay on the beach by the boat and do not mess around with the cows because, surely Helios is going to find out.
Not even tip him.
You can't actually do that. Tipping cows is not real. So the men all agree, and they actually do exactly what Odysseus says, and the next morning, they're ready to set sail. No problem. Except a problem. Overnight, all the wind has died. They're stuck on the island. So they're forced to stay on this island for a full month, eating through their stores of food. So yeah, you all see where this is going. They begin to starve after a while, and one day, while Odysseus is taking a nap, one of the men says, starving to death is the worst fate. Guys, let's just go poach some cows. It's better that he kill us swiftly than let us starve to death. When Odysseus wakes up, he goes to the men, and they're all, picking their teeth with toothpicks or whatever.
A1 sauce everywhere.
He's like, why does it smell like Five Guys out here? And they're like, weird, I don't know.
What about those 6 guys that you got killed? That's what I would say.
So, unsurprisingly, Helios, the sun god, finds out immediately, and he acts like a giant baby. He storms over to Zeus and tattles.
Are you suggesting that Teletubbies and the Odyssey are in the same universe?
And Zeus is like, yeah, alright, I'll punish them. I got a bunch of loose thunderbolts just sitting here, and you know how fast thunderbolts go bad once you open the package. The men sail out, and as soon as they're really far away from land, Zeus really smashes their ship. I mean, he really kills the men. Those are some serious fuck you thunderbolts. And Daniel, this is when Odysseus is about to find out if rock bottom has a cellar.
Good lead in.
I'm teeing it up for you to hit a homer.
So, yeah, the ship explodes or something. He survived by hanging on to a piece of the ship.
Very hang ten cowabunga.
If you will. I won't, yeah. Listen to this. What happened? He's on the bit of wood. It's only floating back to the dreadful rocks of Scylla and Charybdis.
God damn, man.
Bad day. So, a solitary fig tree grows from this rock right next to Charybdis and hangs right over Charybdis's gaping maw. And so Odysseus is like, oh no, and he just does a little jump. He's like, ooh, and grabs it and holds on. Phew, I'm safe. He holds onto the fig tree. So he's just like hanging there on this fig tree. And then Charybdis, you should know, sometimes she sucks, sometimes she belches. Those are her two main activities. So she belches, and some flotsam comes out of her. Odysseus grabs onto it and floats off. After 9 days...
9 days? Eating what? Drinking what? How is he still alive?
Fish? Seawater?
You can't drink seawater and live.
You could back then.
Keep going. After 9 days, what?
He ended up on Calypso's island.
Ooh, and she takes one look at his bedraggled ass and she's like, I've got to hit it like a goddamn freight train.
Exactly, and that's how
he ends up
we got to where
cry boinking her for 7 years.
Yeah, we're back to the middle of the story.
Yeah, so he's telling this whole story, remember, at that weird sports party with the smelly laundry princess. And now is the time for him to continue home. Do we have the energy to continue that today, Daniel, or have we run out of time? Because this is a 24-book poem. This was the end of book 12.
Oh, yeah. Shit. I don't think we're going to make it.
We're not going to make it. So, for the next half of the story, and the casting, and bad good reads, and analysis, and advice, and our clue to the next proper episode, I'm afraid you're going to have to tune in 2 weeks' time.
See you later, then.
Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're on YouTube.
Stay away from my cows as well.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to Save Me From My Shelf. Our music is The Overture to Don Giovanni by Mozart, and cover art is by Catherine Wu. Our thanks to Aston University's Centre for Critical Inquiry into Society and Culture for funding the startup of this podcast. Contact us at savemefrommyshelf@gmail.com or at smfms_podcast on Twitter. And do not, I'm going to remind you, do not forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Do not forget. Thank you.